We're going to move on to the second part of the ethics and ownership section, and that is based on artificial intelligence. Let's start by defining what AI is and the background to this particular field before we look into what you need to know for the syllabus. Artificial intelligence is a machine or application which carries out a task that requires some degree of intelligence when carried out by a human being. So, if we are going to do something and there is some form of intelligence on our part involved in that process, then getting a computer to do the same thing is what we call artificial intelligence. Now, these tasks could include the use of language, carrying out a mathematical calculation or function, to things like recognizing a person's face, the ability to operate machinery such as a car or a plane or a train, or even analyzing data to predict the outcome of future events such as weather forecasting. AI basically duplicates human tasks requiring decision making and problem solving skills. Now, AI has been around for a long time, but it came to prominence with IBM's Deep Blue computer. Now, this computer was very good at one particular thing, and that was playing chess. So, when it started defeating human beings, AI suddenly came into prominence. Otherwise, we've been using artificial intelligence and algorithms which make decisions for a long time in the past. It really captured the imagination, and this was around, I think, 1997. So it was the first computer that beat a world champion at chess. And that was a very, very big thing. And it led to all sorts of news articles. The machines are coming, they're going to take over the world. And for a long time, people thought that the reign of artificial intelligence will be much more sooner than expected. But nothing happened until 2012. And that's when Geoffrey Hinton, who is also called the godfather of deep learning, started to look into artificial intelligence and paired it up with a subset of artificial intelligence, which is called deep learning, and started to think of practical uses, not the world changing events, but the day to day things. And that's what's classified as artificial intelligence's Big Bang. So, a lot of the work that went into deep propagation, a lot of the work that goes into neural networks originated around this time. And that's when big companies started to take notice of deep learning and the impact it could have in automating decision making and processes, and in turn saving costs and making money. And when they realized that, AI really exploded. Now, AI is one part of the big puzzle. Other elements that you're going to be probably looking into a bit more depth later in year 13 are deep learning and machine learning. So deep learning is a subset of machine learning, which in turn relates to artificial intelligence. And somewhere in the middle is that holy grail of a general purpose intelligence, which is often described in science fiction, fantasy, and things like robots. So if you ever see movies like The Terminator, you will probably see that an AI that takes over the world and humans have to fight against it. That's where it comes across. There are numerous films and books that fuel this association, and the science fiction author Isaac Asimov went so far as to produce his own 3 laws of robotics. A robot may not injure a human through action or inaction. A robot must obey orders given by humans without question. A robot must protect itself unless it conflicts with the 2 laws above. Now, AI goes way beyond robotics. It covers an ever-increasing number of areas such as autonomous vehicles, artificial limbs, drones, climate change predictions, medical procedures, you name it, it's everywhere. And the reason it's expanding so quickly is because of money. It's basic economics. An AI-based system can make decisions quickly, doesn't get tired, and uses the data set that's been generated to make clever decisions, and then it can learn as it goes along. So it makes economic sense to have certain types of tasks automatically controlled by the computer. So this fueled a lot of AI-based development. But all of this was behind the scenes. It wasn't that great big AI machine that was going to change the world. Until 2016, 2017, when Google developed an application using the DeepMind computer, and this was in the field of Go. Now, Go is a far more complex game than chess, and in 2017, DeepMind became the first computer that beat the reigning champion without a handicap, and the game series went 4-1 in AlphaGo's favor. And that was phenomenal. And at that point in time, a lot of the organizations around the world, this is now governments, started looking into artificial intelligence a bit more seriously because Go is a very strategic game, and a lot of the military commanders around the world know about it. So they were thinking about, okay, well, where do you apply it? Warfare. So you can see potential there in developing systems that can actively make decisions on their own to reduce human casualties. So it became quite prominent in those circles, and that also fueled a lot of development. And then fast forward to Singapore in 2019, where the best thing ever, a robot ended up assembling an IKEA chair in just 7 minutes, and that too without swearing. And that was a phenomenal achievement because if you ever bought IKEA furniture, you know how difficult it can be to assemble. Now, jokes aside, all of these examples are examples of narrow AI. AI which is designed for one specific purpose and it can do that purpose really, really well. We're still no closer to a general AI, the kind of AI that you see in movies and science fiction, and that's, I think, a few decades away, even still. But that's what people are scared of because you might even have the most basic general purpose AI, and that can be quite powerful. And a thought experiment that's often done in this regards is that think about a general purpose AI that you created, and it's a very basic one, and its purpose is to collect stamps. And it's intelligent and it has access to your details, and you put a time limit for about 1 year. And in this 1 year, this AI has to collect the most stamps possible. Now, the AI will start to think about different ways of collecting stamps. Maybe it should bid on eBay or an appropriate site. Maybe it should connect with various different stamp collectors all around the world and ask for stamps, and it will start rating all of those according to a particular criteria. Well, maybe if I connect with a few people around the world, they'll send me some stamps and I might get 10, 20 stamps. Maybe if I pay for stamps, I might get 40, 50 before the credit card runs out. So it's working on all of that. And then it might just start thinking, what else can I do? And it might say, well, okay, what if I create a website and say that I'm going to advertise or I'm going to showcase this stamp. So I'll ask all these stamp people around the world to send me stamps, which I can display in my fake museum or a fake art display or whatever. And then it will create a fake website and it will start creating all of these little artifacts that it can use to convince people to send stamps for display. And it might be successful because it knows people and it'll start observing their behavior. So, how can it approach a particular person to get them to send stamps? Then it might say, well, okay, that might get me a few hundred stamps or 1,000 stamps. But what if I write a virus? And with this virus, I can control all the printers in the world and get them to start printing stamps. All right, so that might kind of get me a few. What if I go a step further and hijack all the printing presses that are actually used to print stamps and start using those? So you can see how it's going to keep working across different possibilities. And it might even start thinking, well, okay, what are stamps actually made out of? So you think about paper, paper is broken down into carbon and oxygen, and it starts thinking, well, okay, who else is made out of carbon and water and oxygen and all of those basic components, and that's us human beings. So you can see where this is going. A general purpose AI has no particular bounds. It only wants that task to be completed in that 1 year, and it will choose the best option possible that will help it achieve that task. It doesn't care, it doesn't have any emotions, it just wants to complete that task. This is a thought experiment. Where does this stamp collector stop? It's quite interesting to think about AI in terms such as these, because then that leads to certain ethical dilemmas popping up.
Do we empower AI to such an extent where it can start making decisions on our behalf? And where would those decisions actually stop? Who controls the decision making process? What kind of safeguard measures can we put in place to protect ourselves and so on? Now, there are a lot of different types of organizations, OpenAI being one, that is working towards creating some kind of ethical AI solutions. And there are a lot of other companies out there who have their own definitions. Now, current state of AI is basic robotics, voice recognition, translations, things like searching, all of that is possible. But we can also have AI like GPT-3, which can write articles, poems, even business contracts at the same level as a human being. And of course, there's artificial intelligence and machine learning being used in a lot of different industries and sectors. So a lot of people are now actively thinking about the impact that AI could have and start to build some kind of standards and systems that need to be adhered to. Now, another experiment in AI at university level, perhaps something that you might encounter yourself, was the use of an artificially intelligent virtual teaching assistant. This teaching assistant was AI driven, and it was one of eight or nine teaching assistants that were available to students at a university. Now, students did not actually clock that this AI was not human. They actually believed this was a normal person until they found out that this AI based teaching assistant was more efficient than all the other ones put together. And that's it. Well, hang on a second. No one can be this efficient. And that's how they managed to work it out. Now, this artificial intelligence assistant is named Jill Watson, and it's about 4 years old now, and it's activated in Georgia Tech by the School of Interactive Computing. Now, you can search for it to find out a bit more, but imagine when you go to university, you might be interacting with an artificially intelligent teaching assistant, and you might not even know the difference. But why are people scared of artificial intelligence? Well, human beings think about the future and get overly excited, and they overestimate how long it takes for a technology to actually make an impact. And examples of this is VR. Back in the 1980s and 90s, people got so excited like VR will change the world, and then nothing happened until 20 years later when VR started to come to the mainstream. We sometimes underestimate how long it actually takes, and we think that technology will make an immediate impact, but it takes time for people to get together and have discussions and build systems. So AI might have an impact, but once it starts making an impact, it's going to go pretty quickly, and you're going to see a lot of changes very fast. And that's basically the scary bit. That in itself was a very long introduction to the topic of artificial intelligence. So start looking at the focus of what AI is all about. So as part of this lesson, you need to show an understanding of AI. Hopefully you got a bit of an idea. You need to understand the impact of AI, including social, economic, and the impact it has on environments. You need to understand the applications of AI and how we can leverage them to make an impact on society. And what are the ethical aspects of working with AI when we apply it to these type of industries. So let's start by looking at the impact of AI on society, because as a result of the increasing automation, especially over the next few decades, the human race will need to consider all of these impacts, whether they're positive or negative, and how they will impact the way we live. And you will need to start thinking about these and highlight the benefit and drawbacks and consider the overall impact. So a lot of essay type questions and description and evaluative questions in your exam will be based on this particular topic. History has shown that despite what people say to the contrary, previous technological advances have all ended up in creating a net increase in jobs rather than reducing it. We look at the industrial revolution, we look at the technological revolution, we look at the use of robotics. More jobs are now being created as a result of these technologies that have been introduced rather than lost. As automation takes over, it might be that low paid jobs, jobs on the factory floor, are lost, because production is now much more faster, more efficient, and that requires an increase in the number of people doing tasks that the automation process cannot yet do, such as quality control, test driving new vehicles, and so on. Or even things like maintaining machines that actually do the productions, or writing the software, or doing maintenance of these machines, all lead to an increase in jobs, a lot of higher paid jobs. So technology creates new jobs which are generally more interesting to humans than the manual jobs which were lost. However, we also need to kind of keep this in mind that history does not always repeat itself. So we need to prepare ourselves for a large reduction in employment and think about how to redistribute wealth so the overall impact of AI will be positive. Now, the graph simply highlights what's happening over the last 150 years, that industrial and agriculture jobs are on the way down, and services job, which are all to do with service industry, coding, use of software, providing services to people, are all increasing. And we expect that to continue to happen when AI impacts the workforce. Now, research has predicted that by 2030, some 600 million jobs will be lost globally, and as many as 400 million people will need to retrain or switch jobs. And all of this might be caused by the inevitable advances in artificial intelligence. And the most likely jobs that are going to be lost are those doing medium and low skilled work, but high skilled jobs such as hospital technicians, architects, engineers are also at risk. And this could lead to a lot of civil unrest with large numbers of young people out of work with few or no employment prospects unless they have a sought after skill or they can retrain themselves. And it's predicted that eventually 99% of all jobs could be eliminated since the increase in the use of AI is exponential. Competition between countries and companies is going to result in them expanding their profit margins or economies, and that's going to have a significant impact and will be a great driving force into how AI is going to be utilized across the world. If 99% of the jobs disappear, who will make or maintain these robots or these AI programs? Are we going to end up like the people in the Disney movie Wall-E, where everything is done by devices and software, and we just end up eating and becoming unhealthy, just watching Netflix all the time? Will robots and machines build other machines? What will we as humans do? Will we have more time for hobbies and recreation? What will be our health like? A lot of these type of questions can come to your mind when you start hearing statements like these. Of course, nobody knows the future, but it's interesting to start thinking and debating about possible solutions before we arrive to that stage. Now, we've been discussing about the impacts of AI on the workforce. Let's start looking at the impacts of artificial intelligence on the environment. Now, being left behind is not an economic option, but is it a good environmental option when you're developing AI? Now, AI can help by finding patterns and interconnections between thousands of data sets. So you can use it to make predictions about what's going to happen with the weather, potential climate change. And the use of AI systems can speed up this process incredibly and allow the human race to take action much faster than they could by present methods. Now, on screen, there are a few potential ways in which AI can help. AI can help us with conserving natural resources by allocating things much more efficiently. It can help in detection of pollution in the air and in the seas. We can combine weather forecasting and artificial intelligence to allow better predictions. And we can use that to find out how much renewable energy resources we need. And AI would allow us to learn from nature's ecosystems by monitoring and modeling and allow us to quickly take action before the effects become irreversible. Now, you need to be able to understand the impact of AI on the environment. So, a lot of wider reading needs to be done along this topic as well. It's one of the key topics for discussion at AS level. Another key area is the impact of artificial intelligence on transport. And we know all about driverless cars. You might have seen them on the roads. Tesla's models can drive by themselves now. And a customer can, in the future, be able to call up a taxi using an app on their mobile phone. The app will be able to handle the payment automatically. Information about the taxi, such as location and estimated times, would be sent to the phone, and until the driverless taxi arrives at the exact pickup point, the user will be informed about it. There would be no people anywhere in the chain, and artificial intelligence systems take total control. And some car manufacturers are on the brink of actually supplying autonomous vehicles like cars, buses, and trucks right now. Now, this will have a great impact on people who work in the transport industry, people like drivers. And you can see a lot of drivers who ply their trade and earn a living from taxi services and transporting goods might all be impacted by the efficiency that artificial intelligence based transport systems might provide. AI is also having an impact on the criminal justice system, how the courts work, how law is interpreted, and how to manage crime and cases and trials. So with advances in facial recognition systems, it's making fingerprinting in forensic science almost obsolete. AI is also being used to automate legal work, with some courts in the United States in particular. They've already trialed the use of AI to sentence criminals and even decide if the prisoner is eligible for release under parole systems. Now, is this a bad thing? So, there are quite a few questions for you to think about in this arena. Does government use of AI need a warrant to allow online data to be searched for all potential criminal activity, or the just machine does it on its own? Can AI be used to listen into our conversations and assess our emails without any kind of search warrant? Could criminals make use of it to hide criminal activity themselves? What about legal malpractice? What would be the mechanism to challenge an AI inspired legal decision? How do we ensure no bias creeps into AI decision making processes itself? So you could think about different methods, maybe having two AIs passing a sentence and then a human being coming into play and assessing it to build trust in that system. And there could be a lot of mechanisms for us to play around and test before we actually implement an effective AI system. Like, for example, get a judge to pass a sentence based on the trial and get an AI judge to pass the system and then see how different they are. So, things like that could be put into place, which not only generate trust, but also provide a method of verification. Now, AI can also impact advertising and data use. And if you haven't heard about Cambridge Analytica, which was a massive scandal in 2018, I would suggest you search for it and find out a bit more. And that hinged around the potential misuse of data obtained from a social media company. Nearly 90 million profiles had been used by the company, leading some people to believe it had actually influenced the 2016 US presidential elections themselves. Now, AI could reduce such occurrences by allowing closer monitoring. It would need to be very sophisticated and act quickly to have any real impact. And human beings in general can't respond fast enough when people start misusing social media profiles. Algorithms can also tailor advertising aimed at specific people by using machine learning. And this can be tailored by looking through profiles and then building a personality profile for every internet and mobile phone user. You can pick data up from search engines, social media profiles, visit to websites, maybe even e commerce sites, and all this data can be analyzed by machine learning algorithms. What you need to think about that is this a good thing? Are there chances of abuse, bad decision making, bias, which can creep into this particular system as well? Training data and bias plays a big role in creating corrupt artificial intelligence systems which might not be fair to all members of society. So we need to ensure that training data is bias free when we're setting up AI systems. Hopefully, the discussion gives you a great insight into the impacts of AI. And what I would like you to now do is start working on producing a short essay or perhaps a wall display for your classroom. I would probably say go with an essay at the moment because that's the easiest thing for us to do. But you might want to kind of create both, which highlights the pros and cons of using AI in a particular field. Now, you need to draw a reasoned conclusion about the overall impact of AI on a particular field. So you might pick things like gaming, you might pick economics, you might pick transport. You can choose a field of your own choosing, or you can have a general discussion about the overall impact of AI on society, which covers all the different areas like environment, transport, and so on. The essay should be maximum 2 sides of A4, a minimum of 1,000 words. And if you're creating that wall display, then it should be of A3 size, where you are perhaps discussing all the key points that might be relevant to either society or to your industry that you're focusing on. It's been a very long lesson. Let's take a break for now and we'll pick it up in the next session. Bye for now.